I got into cycling because it was a family sport, so my parents were already involved in it, so it was very easy for me to slip into it. I tried some other sports, did a bit of running, cross country with the school, and a little bit of swimming as well. But really, the cycling was part of my social life as well, so it was much easier for me to go that route. I never really thought really long term about where I was going to go and what I was going to do. I thought very much, as far as I ever really went was at 12 months, because that was a believable amount of time where I could see where I was now, I could see where I might be able to push forward to, and that's what got me motivated and passionate to be able to close that gap. And if I started to think further than 12 months, they became very, if you like, dreams, and that never really motivated me. I wanted to be able to control and to be able to it sounds quite cheesy, but control my own destiny. I think all of those things, all of those different targets came of a different point. I never, for example, wanted to turn professional and ride a Tour de France because it's a big, hard sport. It's painful, it's dangerous, it lasts for hours. No one in the right mind would want to do it. But when I got to the point in my career where I was top of the Olympic step, it was either right, wait here and wait to get knocked down, or the only way to go forward at the time was to turn professional. So I almost didn't have a choice. So that's why I went that route. Olympic Games and everything else, no, I watched them on television, but I only really thought, as I say earlier, 12 months ahead, and that was about as far as I could go. With the Olympic Games, it was 2 years out when we realised, from a result at World Championships, that the gap between where I was and the best in the world was small enough. And that's when we spotted the Olympics 2 years away and thought, that's possible. And that increased passion and commitment and sacrifices more than I would have thought as possible once we realised that goal was in sight. There's a wholly different type of pressure when you win. When you're trying to win, you can always exceed expectations. Once you've actually stood on the top step of the podium, you can either do what people expect, and yourself included, what you expect, or you fail. And that's a different type of motivation. It's a wholly different kind of pressure, to negative pressure, and it's a different thing to have to deal with that level of expectation. I think motivation very much comes from when you have something taken away, you genuinely get to see whether you want it, and then if you can't have it, that gives you a burning sense of desire. So I wanted to come back. And funnily enough, the next year, 96, was arguably my most successful. The bike was actually designed by a guy called Mike Burrows, and Lotus took it for 12 months and polished it, I suppose is as much as you could say. And Lotus made available a wind tunnel that we got to use, which was quite rare for cyclists to do anything like that. Probably a handful of times it had ever been done. And the main thing that Lotus brought was they allowed me to actually examine my position. And because some of the aerodynamicists had nothing to do with cycling, they weren't blinkered as to what you had to look like when you rode a bike. So we experimented in the wind tunnel with position, and they said, well, can you ride like this, or can you ride like this, and it's things, the areas we wouldn't have looked because we were blinkered as what you look like when you ride a bike. Graham O'Brien was an eccentric guy who brought a completely different position to riding. He, like Lotus, was able to look at cycling dispassionately and say, well, if air resistance is everything, if I take my arms away and ride like this, I'm going to go faster. And he was a very, very good athlete as well, an extraordinary athlete. And he did it, and we hated it. It looked awful. It didn't look like bike riding anymore. It looked like human-powered vehicle racing, and it looked daft. And the institution, the fraternity of cycling, didn't like it at all. But nevertheless, he beat them. He beat me, he beat the world, he became world champion. And then when they banned that, he said, right, okay, I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to ride like this. And the Superman position was born, and that was really effective. So he was a real oddity. From a personal perspective, he was the only person in my early career, pre-Olympic Games, that when I was on really good form, he could still beat me in a time trial. And when you look back, I realised that moved me on. I would have stayed where I was because the level of commitment and everything else got me the rewards that I wanted, but only by somebody being there to push me actually made me move forwards again. So he was instrumental, ironically, in me probably winning Olympic Games and everything else. First stage of the Tour de France, and of course the weather changed, and it rained halfway through, and I pushed a little bit too hard and ended up with a broken ankle, broken in 6 places, broken nose, broken wrist, and having to be flown back to Britain to be operated on. So it was a bit of a mess. And I blame the crash on myself. I mean, ultimately, I'm the guy with my hands near the brakes, and he's putting down the power, and I can choose. I have a choice to back off or to not back off, and I thought I knew where the edge of the envelope was, and I was wrong. The whole interest of sport was trying to be better. Here we are now, how do we go the next step? How do we get more? How do we get better? And as soon as I realised we couldn't do that anymore, I lost interest in that single moment. The passion had gone then. And like most sports, it's not something you can do very well as a job. You know, you just can't. It needs all of you. But I wasn't the same, and I was at that point, the end of '97, 2 years to go. I was looking towards retirement then, and I don't regret it at all. And it feels like a different life now. I feel like a different person now. Can't believe I used to do those things, and it was great. But I'm quite happy it's over, and have no wish to go back.